Welcome to pattern making class. I'm your college instructor, Annette Julie, and today we're working on adding fullness to our center front princess seam bodice. This princess seam bodice goes to the shoulder, but you could also use this for one that goes to the armhole. So you're going to need to get this from one of my prior videos, or hopefully you have it all ready to go. We're also going to work on making this pattern a full pattern piece. We're going to butterfly it so we have a representation of the full pattern piece on the other side. Grab your pattern making tools, scissors, tape, pens, pencil, some weights, pattern rulers, and here we go. So I'm going to take my pattern piece and I'm going to go ahead and lay it in the middle here to make sure I'm going to have enough paper on both sides. That looks good since I'm going to butterfly it, which means I'll need the full representation. Then I'm also going to make it longer. So I've allowed for paper extending 6 to 8 inches below. Let's go ahead and draw our grain line. I'm using alpha numeric marking paper. And this is very easy to use for a first pattern. Adding our grain line. Good. Now I'm going to go ahead and fold this, and I'm just going to lightly crease it right there in the middle and a little bit down the line, just a light crease, trying to get it right on the line first. Okay, now from the middle of the paper again, you can give it a little bit more of a hard crease out to the cut edge. And there, we have a nice folded piece of paper. We're going to take our pattern piece that's only half and a little scrap underneath there, and we're going to place it right here on the front. And we're not adding fullness up here to the top, so you can bring this up to the top and line that up. Weight this down, line up the bottom there, weight that down. Okay, yep, that looks good. Now I could either tape this down or trace it off, and so I'm going to tape it down because we've already done a bunch of the work. And this is the first pattern. It's a working pattern. So it can have tape. It can have slash marks. It can have little scribbles. And I prefer my students go ahead and pattern make in pencil so that they can neaten up their pattern. Now we've taped this down, but I haven't taped on the pattern below the notch closest to the waist. Here's the waist, here's my princess seam, here's the center front of the princess seam panel that we've made. We wrote cut on fold, but we want to make the full pattern piece so we have that fold. This is the bust, and all the adding is going to be under the bust to add fullness down there. So we don't need to go ahead and tape it any further down, just from the single notch all the way up. Right here's a portion of the bust mound between those two single notches. Okay, now on the other video, I added fullness to the side front piece. Here was the original, and then here's the piece I added. So we added 1, 2, 3, 4 and we added 1.5 inches per. Okay, this is also so people know this is 1 1/4, and then I added 1.5 inches. The piece that I sliced was 1 1/4, and then I added 1.5 inches. Okay, so this is 1 1/4, the existing pattern. These are inches. And then I added 1 1/2 inches. Okay, this is 1 1/4, and then I added that 1.5 inches. So we're going to do the same thing to extend this on this pattern. So I'm going to mark right where that notch is and bring that perpendicular right with the front there. Okay, I'm happy. Finally. Then we're going to go ahead and make our 1 1/4. One 1/4. One 1/4 and 1 1/4 right there. But this part curves up, no problem. So you can divide this space. I made, like I said, these spaces are 1 1/4 inches, but you can do 1 inch. Okay, you could do 1 1/2. You can do 2 inches. And basically we're trying to create slash lines so that we can spread. This is another slash and spread technique, and add in between and then come back and blend. So if you have too many of these slash lines, it's a lot more work. If you don't have enough, like you only have 2, then it doesn't give you enough of an outside line to follow as a template. So this is pretty good. Now we're going to go ahead and start by separating the lower portion. Okay, and this is that notch right underneath that bust mound. We're adding fullness below the bust mound, like I said, and we're going to pull that off. There we go. And add a little tape to make sure this all stays on here at the bottom. And then now we'll set this aside. We'll add our fullness. And just like in that last pattern piece, I added 1 1/2. And that's what I'm adding here. 1 1/2. I'm adding a little bit more than the piece I'm slashing. Instead of it being 1 to 1, it's just a little bit more. I'd like to make this blouse eventually in a nice Pima cotton. This is a woven pattern, but this technique works for knits as well. If you wanted to do this method into a rayon lycra jersey or something, that would work fine too. I've taped down this piece. I'm going to slash the next one. Put this piece aside. Let's go ahead and tape down. And again, we have our slash and our spread. And we're adding fullness so that we can make shirring with elastic or basting stitches or a drawstring, or a combination thereof. And take this and put this right back on top. Grab some tape, tape it down, and let's go ahead and cut off the bottom. I have some more spreading to do. And my tape came up, so let me go ahead and reposition that. And we have some spreading to do. That looks good. Grab a piece of tape. And we're doing a parallel spread. Parallel slash and spread. Go ahead and cut this off. A little bit more added fullness. Another 1.5 inches. Tape down my last piece. Great. Now we need to go ahead and blend right through here. And we had done a little contouring even on this seam. So I'm going to use my hip curve, and I'm going to start from, this is where our notch needs to be. So let me make it a little bit more prominent. I'm going to draw our side seam now, and this all includes seam allowance because we traced it off originally and put the seam allowance on. I think I'll go ahead and put a little bit more tape on the ends here too, so it doesn't lift up. Here. Tape is your friend. Okay. Bottom here, and it's okay if you cut a little bit off. That's what we're doing, cutting a little bit of the tips off. I'm contouring this. The seam was contoured, so let's keep it contoured by using a curve ruler. And here you cut off a little, teeny bit, and it blends right back in. That's the line that we want. All includes the seam allowance. I'll put our notch in there for our side seam, our princess seam going up. And now we can go ahead and cut this pattern out. Our shoulder. Now we're going to cut out our princess seam. Let me trim the neckline while I'm up here. And this is a neckline just from the basic bodice. It can always be opened up, made into a V, a square, a sweetheart. And I'd be happy to show you in my other videos. Now we're cutting off those little triangles, little extra pieces of fabric, paper that we do not want when we cut the fabric. And you're cutting the layer underneath. Now we have the full pattern. This looks great. We can come back and use our notching tool on our notches. But right now, we want to go ahead and finish up here our little sides, our princess seam. So we're going here with an arrow up to here where we have our notch under the bust mound. And like our last pattern piece, we are going to shear this to 5 inches. That can be done with 2 rows of basting stitch. It can be done with clear elastin. It can be done with 1/4 inch elastic. It can be done with a drawstring and a casing. We can do that over here to the side seam. And you can use your notching tool on all your notches. I look forward to everybody watching my next videos. There's going to be so many more. Enjoy your pattern making day.